With the 21.11 release of SAP S/4HANA Cloud, a new self-service configuration UI was made available to customers in their configuration environment. This SSC UI that we are referring to is one that applies in the area of basic transportation management and is named Define Logistics Integration Profile. Whilst this SSC UI was already in the system in the 21.08 release, it was only accessible in the backend. This has now been remedied in the 21.11 release. To explain what has changed and how this logistics integration profile is used in the system, let us explain with the aid of this example how this unfolds. So typically what happens, and we are taking the sales order process as an example, but it also applies to the purchase order process. So what happens is that a person would create a sales order, and upon saving it, the defined transportation relevance of sales documents SSC UI would then be invoked to determine if the sales order was one that required planning via basic transportation management. If the sales order was determined to be relevant for basic transportation management planning, what would then happen is that in this configuration point, the system would point to a logistics integration profile. And in the 21.08 release, you essentially had one logistics integration profile for orders that were going to be planned with an external transportation management system, and you also had one logistics integration profile if your sales order was going to be planned inside SAP S/4HANA Cloud with basic transportation management. Now the point is that the logistics integration profile would then point to a freight unit building rule. And again, before 21.11, it really was a very binary choice in that if the sales order was going to be requiring planning with basic TM, it would point to one logistics integration profile, and this one logistics integration profile was going to point to one and only one freight unit building rule, and the freight unit building rule, of course, is then used to determine how the resulting freight units of the sales orders are going to be produced. So the key takeaway is that there was only one logistics integration profile that applied to your process, and there was only one freight unit building rule that applied to your process. What has now changed with the 21.11 release is that the logistics integration profile has been made visible to customers. And this, of course, now also opens a world of possibilities in that you are no longer restricted to only being able to leverage one freight unit building rule, hence one integration profile. Indeed, customers can now create multiple logistics integration profiles, number one, and a logistics integration profile is also going to offer you the ability to leverage what's called a condition, i.e. a conditional determination of what freight unit building rule to use when you are going to be building the freight units of your sales order. As an example, it could be that if you use a shipping condition A in your sales order, you may want to have the freight unit building rule X apply. And if you are going to be using a shipping condition B in your sales order, it could be that you want to determine a freight unit building Y to build the freight units, i.e. you have a choice that is managed via this manage condition, and the condition is going to leverage what we call a decision table or a business rules framework table to determine which freight unit building rule it should be used. Of course, if this does not apply to you, meaning that you still have only one freight unit building rule that applies to you, then you can leverage the same features that you had in the 21.08 release. You do not need to change anything. So now that we've kind of explained the theory, let's have a quick look into the system, how this all hangs together. So once in the system, what you want to do is you want to go to the application area supply chain, sub-application area transportation management, and in the transportation order management configuration item, you will find that the define logistics integration profile step has been added there. So to configure it, as usual, simply click on the configure button, And you then have the ability to create new logistics integration profiles. The novelty, of course, here is that, as I said, you can reference a freight unit building rule. That could be one used as a default, or what you can also now add is a freight unit building rule condition, and we'll get to it in just a moment. Once you've created the logistics integration profile, you need to associate this logistics integration profile with the relevance of your sales or purchasing documents. Let's have a look at those configuration points. If we are looking at sales documents, then we would still need to access the defined transportation relevance of sales document SSCUI, and again click on configure to start its configuration. And for the combination of sales relevancy, so in this case for the order that would be created in sales organization 1710, distribution channel 10, division 00, sales document type OR, and shipping condition ZT, we would want to leverage the logistics integration profile ZPR2, which is the one that we just looked at, that is going to leverage a condition to determine the freight unit building rule. The condition that we had referenced in the defined logistics profile SSCUI can be maintained via a separate app available in the Fiori Launchpad called Manage Condition. In our case, here we find the condition that we have defined and referenced in our logistics integration profile. And if we go into it, as I indicated earlier on, we have a decision table that has the combination that we have chosen that help us to then indicate the freight unit building rule that should be determined if my sales order falls under one of these shipping conditions. Now in this case, I have made it very simple in that I have only used the shipping condition as a determining factor, meaning that if my sales order has a shipping condition of 05, it will then determine a freight unit building rule ZPR2 FUBR2. And if I use a shipping condition of ZT, it will determine a freight unit building rule ZPR2 FUBR1. These are not the only criteria that can be used as determinants. What you can also do is you can, in the data access definition screen, define additional determining factors. To show them to you, I'll go to Edit. I will go to the DAD, Data Access Definition screen. I will simulate the creation or the addition of an additional condition. And by calling the search help, you can see that I could also use the destination location, the source location, or the transportation group, in addition to the shipping condition, which I have already selected to build my decision table. And so we will now go on to create a sales order to verify that our condition works correctly. So I'll go ahead and create a sales order with the combination that is going to help me determine the logistics integration profile ZPR2, which, if you recall from the decision table, I should have a shipping condition ZT to determine the freight unit building rule ZPR2 FUBR1. So I'm just going to save my sales order and go back into it in display mode to look at the TM document flow and navigate to the resulting freight unit, which hopefully will have the ZPR2 FUBR1 freight unit building rule. And there we go. We can see that the correct freight unit building rule has been determined on the basis of my decision table that referenced the shipping condition ZT, which is indeed what I have in my sales order.